France is fiercely proud of its culture and history. Walk down any of Paris's grand boulevards and you quickly realise the capital is a monument to the glories of the empire. The nation's cultural trophies are on display in its world-class museums. Now the debate about who owns many of these precious objects is firing up. When France colonised Africa, it brought home tens of thousands of its cultural objects, many taken under duress, others looted during violent conflict. France insists they're the rightful owner, but others say they belong in Africa and should be returned.
It's just not possible to have 90% of your heritage thousands of kilometers away.
Some are fed up with waiting.
On part avec notre bien, je suis venu récupérer ça au musée des Quais Branly.
If you allow people to come and take back what they want based on their own feeling, what will be the future of museum?
I leave the opulence of old Paris and head 30 minutes out of the city. Champigny-sur-Marne is a melting pot of people from different cultures, many from former French colonies and departments. I'm here to meet a man determined to force France to confront its colonial past.
Bonjour.
Bonjour,
Bonjour.
ça va bien?
Oui,
Ah,
ça
ouais.
va, ça va.
Sinon,
Votre quartier?
oui, je suis non loin d'ici et souvent on vient aussi...
Mwazulu Diabanzo was born in the Democratic Republic of Congo in Central Africa.
Il y a un petit marché.
Oui, c'est un petit marché juste ici, là.
D'accord.
He's a political refugee who came to live in France as a young man.
Je pense que pour rentrer, il faut le masque.
This looks amazing.
Quelques produits africains qui se vendent là. Ah, voilà.
What is this?
Ça, c'est des aubergines africaines. Des légumes parfaits, quoi. Merci, madame. Merci.
He's still an activist, but now his fight is with the French state. He believes it's still behaving like a colonial power in Africa.
Patriotique, comment allez-vous?
Mwazulu is a leader of an African socialist group. Its members in Europe and Africa do regular hookups to discuss politics and strategy.
D'accord. Mais sinon, pour les activités, c'est comment?
They're fighting for the return of their cultural heritage. Without it, they believe Africa will never know its true self.
La maison culturelle a été détruite. L'âme de l'Afrique vraie a été volée. Il faut réparer cela. Pour reconstruire cet édifice, on commence d'abord par des briques qui ont été justement volées. Et ces briques-là, ce sont nos pièces-là. C'est les restes humains de nos ancêtres qui sont enterrés ici.
But it's not that simple. Here in France, the return of cultural objects has long been a taboo topic. Then in 2017, the subject became a heated national talking point when President Macron, shortly after his election, visited Africa and made a radical promise.
Le patrimoine africain ne peut pas être uniquement dans des collections privées et des musées européens. Je veux que d'ici 5 ans, les conditions soient réunies pour des restitutions temporaires ou définitives du patrimoine africain en Afrique.
But 4 years on, only 2 objects have been returned.
La déclaration d'Emmanuel Macron, pour nous, ce sont des manœuvres dilatoires. Vous savez, comme tout fin politique, on donne souvent aux gens ce qu'ils veulent entendre. Et c'est ce qu'a fait Emmanuel Macron.
Last year, Muzulu took matters into his own hands, starting in Paris.
Voilà. On part avec notre bien. Je suis venu récupérer ça au musée de Quai Branly.
He began big at the Quai Branly Museum, which has tens of thousands of objects from Africa.
Quand on entre dans un musée, c'est le symbole d'avoir pris l'objet qui compte pour nous. C'est-à-dire d'avoir libéré cet objet. Je ramène en Afrique tout ce qui a été pillé, tout ce qui a été volé, alors que le sang des Africains coulait.
Then in Marseille, he snatched an object from a museum, live streaming the entire stunt to his followers online.
Mesdames et messieurs, hommes et femmes, êtes-vous complices de ces crimes odieux? Quand on fait cet acte-là, on voudrait dire au monde entier que la pièce a été libérée.
Ils nous ont bloqués.
He even tried it on in the world's most famous museum, the Louvre.
Donc, ils ont pillé, volé. Alors,
But he got arrested.
je suis venu récupérer.
He even went to the Netherlands, where he actually managed to get a sculpture outside the museum. But he didn't get far.
Staan blijven!
Oui.
Staan.
Explique-lui.
Je heb gestolen. Je zegt je pakt wat is van Afrika, die heeft dat teruggepakt.
Hey! Staan blijven! Aan de kant! Die kant op. Rustig.
His actions are very political. I don't think this man is trying to steal anything from any museum. His point is to show that there is a problem and nobody is speaking about it.
The color and the pattern.
Marie-Cécile Zanzu is a curator of contemporary African art. Her family comes from France and the tiny West African nation of Benin.
These objects are part of our history and explain who we were. So they're very, very important. It's very symbolical. It's not really a question, of money or importance, financial importance, because some of these objects are very precious, some of them not at all. But the thing is that they tell us who we are.
Identity is at the heart of artist Romeo Mvykanen's work. Born in Africa, he now lives in France. His family is West African royalty.
Bonjour Romeo. Comment allez-vous?
His great-great-grandfather was King Behanzin in what is now the nation of Benin.
Romeo, you've got such an interesting history. In fact, you're descendant from Beninois royalty. Tell me about your family.
Quand on me demande au fait le rôle ou la signification, le signifiant en tout cas de ce que représente Béhanzin, c'est l'équivalent de Napoléon en France, quoi. Parce que c'est quelqu'un vraiment qui a combattu les colons, qui a combattu au nom de la liberté et surtout au fait qu'il s'est battu pour son peuple jusqu'aux derniers instants de sa vie.
In 1892, facing fierce resistance from Behanzin, the French army invaded the kingdom, forcing him and his family into exile. They then pillaged the palace, taking everything from thrones to tunics, before bringing the loot back to France.
Dépouiller ces sociétés de ces objets, quelque part, c'était de les arracher des membres de leur corps. Donc c'était une manière au fait de les amputer de leurs histoires, je pense.
Romeo takes me to see his art just a few blocks away.
This is the work. It's amazing.
Ah oui, c'est vrai, c'est très grand.
His large-scale paintings on linen are hand-painted copies of photographs of his family, showing their journey into exile.
This is your family.
Voilà, la grande famille. Cette femme est la maman de ma grand-mère Yvette Béhanzin.
I can see you actually have put yourself in here as well.
Oui, c'est vrai que je enfin, dans mon travail, souvent, il y a un travail d'autoportrait qui revient. Dans ce cas, au fait, je tiens le parasol au roi. Et c'est une manière, au fait, de s'insérer dans une histoire, au fait, qui est passée, mais dont je fais partie d'une certaine manière.
This one is quite striking image.
He's painted one of the most potent symbols of the king's defeat, an empty throne.
Parce que quelque part, elle représente la présence et l'absence du roi. Les trônes, c'est le siège du roi. Et si on vous enlevez des sièges, vous imaginez pas vous asseoir sans un siège. On n'imagine pas un salon en Europe sans siège. Et c'est comme si, au fait, on enlevait des sièges de cette partie du monde qui a vécu pendant un siècle sans siège.
Thrones and other objects looted from Romeo's ancestors ended up here, in the Quai Branly Museum, France's biggest ethnographic collection.
Emmanuel,
Ireland.
nice to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you.
Born in New Caledonia, Emmanuel Casa Eru is the first Indigenous-born president of a major French museum.
There's many things. We are traveling through Papua New Guinea here. We were in the Solomon Island, and we were passing by a wonderful piece from Vanuatu.
The museum has a collection of 70,000 objects from Africa, most brought to France during its colonial rule.
Some of these are from former French colonies in Africa. How did these come into the museum's collection?
That's one of the main problems we face at the moment, because at the time when these objects were brought to Paris, people do not take very much into account the way it was acquired. There's a big provenance research undertaken at the moment trying to trace back, but it's quite difficult. If they are acquired illegally or illegitimately, but this is our duty to put the case to the head of state saying we should look at this situation, and then the parliament will decide on further action to be done.
In the heart of the museum are some of the objects looted from Benin by the invading French. Statues, doors, and thrones.
Throne here.
This is quite spectacular.
Yeah.
It's huge.
Emmanuel says before the French army reached the palace, King Beihonzon set it alight. The soldiers rescued the objects inside.
Essentially, they were looted, but at the same time saved in a way.
That's quite complicated, yes, always, because it was looted, for sure. But at the same time, these objects wouldn't be there if the palace was completely destroyed by the fire.
Romeo feels torn about the objects ending up in a museum.
Enfin, moi, la première fois, je les ai vus. Oui, il y a une forme de colère intérieure, de douleur, enfin, de voir ces objets-là. On se demande pourquoi ils sont là. Enfin, mais en même temps, si vous voulez, c'est le produit de l'histoire, parce que s'ils n'étaient pas là, on pourrait imaginer qu'ils ont disparu aussi. Donc, un siècle plus tard, je trouve, c'est hyper complexe, quoi.
Muzulu is continuing his battle with the French state, this time on the legal front.
Mesdames, Messieurs, bienvenue à bord du TER Zoo à destination d'Aix-en-Provence.
Today, he's been summoned to appear in court in the southern city, Aix-en-Provence. Muzulu was let off with just a fine for his actions in the Louvre and the Quai Branly museums. He was acquitted for his action in the Marseille Museum, but the prosecutor appealed.
Dommage que le procureur n'a pas accepté de perdre ses combats et il a de nouveau fait appel. Donc on repart justement pour répondre à cette énième convocation de la justice française qui refuse d'entendre la voix de la raison.
Comment vous sentez?
Très serein.
Today, the prosecutor will argue Mwazulu intended to steal. But his lawyer, Olivier Betoe-Beevi, says there's no case to answer.
Cette intention de soustraction frauduleuse n'est pas caractérisée parce que je ne connais pas un voleur qui rentre dans un musée en disant « filmez-moi » et une fois qu'il a été filmé, redépose l'objet pour ensuite discourir sur les motivations, sur ce qu'on appelle en droit le mobile politique. Donc pour moi, en l'espèce, le dossier est vide. Voilà, clairement, le dossier est vide et c'est la relaxe qui devait normalement être confirmée.
But the prosecutor wins and Mwazulu is convicted. He'll appeal, but in the meantime, if he breaks the law again in France, he could go to jail. He says that won't stop him. He's planning to target museums outside France. Macron's bold promise to send African artefacts home has put other European countries on notice. Like France, Germany's museums hold tens of thousands of objects from Africa. But unlike in France, there's a lively debate here about the country's colonial record. And that's putting museums in an awkward position.
So I want to take you around the corner to Wilhelmstrasse. And Wilhelmstrasse is a place that is really crucial for the history of colonialism and therefore...
In downtown Berlin, I'm on a street tour with activist and academic Joshua Kwasi. He wants to show me how traces of Germany's colonial past still linger in the city.
This is the site where the German Chancellor Bismarck invited all the other European colonial powers and the US and the Ottoman Empire to come and discuss the carving up of the African continent.
The meetings began here in 1884.
They all look white to me. Were there any representatives from Africa when this happened?
There were no representatives from the African continent. There was nobody actually from the territories that were carved up.
European nations competed with each other to grab land and resources.
And so German colonies were in what is today Togo, which includes what is today Ghana, right? Cameroon, what was then called German Southwest Africa, today Namibia. All of these places experienced brutal German colonial rule.
Germany's time as a colonial power was short. Nearly 40 years later, it was forced to hand over its territories to the victors of World War I. But artefacts collected during that time still fill its museums. Joshua wants them dealt with in the same way as the art stolen by the Nazis.
All we demand is that the insights Germany gained from that part of its history need to be extended to include the dealings with colonial history and looted art of that era. That it is simply wrong that these objects are there.
I'm heading to Hamburg to see some sculptures that have become the symbol of looted colonial art. Many African artefacts arrived in the port of Hamburg in the 19th century. Among them were some Benin bronzes. These are sculptures and carvings looted by the British in 1897 after a bloody war in Benin City in present-day Nigeria. By the way, that's different to the West African country of Benin, once a French colony.
It's quite an incredible building.
Yeah, it was opened in 1912.
Okay. And you have Benin bronzes here as well?
Yes, we have quite an interesting collection of about 170 pieces.
Dr. Barbara Plankensteiner is a world expert on the Benin bronzes.
Are you able to show me some of them? That's the question.
Yes, we are in the course of restoring 3 works, so we could look at those.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Wow.
Yeah, this is a conservation office. We took 3 of our works out for inspection. So this is one of these relief plaques, very characteristic for the Benin royal art. They tell a lot about the history and the ceremonial culture.
The statues aren't actually all bronze. Some are made of iron, brass and ivory.
So this is, I'm assuming, one piece of ivory that's
Yes.
been carved.
Yes, and it's actually a stuff that has been used in certain ceremonies where with a little ivory stick you would knock on it.
The intricate sculptures documented court life for over 500 years, hanging on palace walls.
And so this type of hat we date into the 19th century.
In person, it's very different from looking at the photographs, isn't it? I mean, there's just so much happening on the actual object.
Yeah, there is inlay. The eyes, the pupils are inlaid with iron.
Iron.
And, iron is a very powerful material. The sheer number and quality of the work is exceptional. There might be about 5,000 works in most prominent museum collections all over the world.
An international campaign for the return of the Benin bronzes to Nigeria has been gathering pace. And it's causing big headaches for Germany's newest and most expensive cultural project. The Humboldt Forum in Berlin was still under construction when we visited. Its collection of non-European art and artefacts is one of the richest in the world. It even has objects from an old German colony in present-day Papua New Guinea.
We've been granted access to the space where the cultural objects from Papua New Guinea will be displayed here at the Humboldt. And it's quite extraordinary, actually, to see the amount of artefacts that they have, like these. It's surreal, actually, to see objects from so close to home actually sitting here in the heart of Berlin.
In the years it's taken to build this massive museum, controversy has raged over what to do with its colonial collection. Hermann Partzinger heads one of the foundations which manages the Humboldt.
Until very few years ago, the colonial history of Germany was not, for the German population, was not really an issue, wasn't really a problem. And of course, the situation changed. We have much more people from Africa living in Germany, the immigrants and so on, so we cannot anymore ignore this.
The Humboldt Forum has the second largest collection of Benin bronzes after the British Museum, over 500 objects. The museum's been under immense public pressure not to display them. But it's continued building this large gallery to show them off.
And so if we just have a look over here, this is will be featuring how many objects, would you say?
Difficult to say, several dozens, of course, of these plaques, of these reliefs.
You plan to exhibit some of the Benin bronzes here. How do you do that ethically, knowing that these objects were looted?
Well, these objects will be exposed. The story behind these objects will be told, the looting and everything. It's important that we have not a lacuna, an empty space here on Benin, or leaving Benin completely and putting a completely other topic from our collections in this gallery.
Recently, the German government said it wants to return a number of bronzes to Nigeria, but it looks like it's going to take some time.
Things should go back, but how many things go back, and which things go back, and which things can be shown here in the Humboldt Forum and in other places, I think this has to be solved in a dialogue with responsible persons in Nigeria. I think this is the important thing which we have to solve.
With COVID restrictions easing, Europe's museums are opening up. And Mwazulu Diabanza is on the move. We track him down in Portugal, where he's being followed by another media team.
Salut. Donc on est déjà à Lisbonne. Bougez-vous. Je ne peux pas vous rappeler le rôle joué par le Portugal dès le premier instant de la déstabilisation de notre mère patrie, l'Afrique.
He's live streaming his every move.
Bon, je vais quitter petit à petit la zone aéroport. On sort par où?
Portugal began colonising parts of Africa as early as the 1400s, one of the first European countries to do so. Mwazulu and his colleagues want to remind people of that history. His first target is the Museum of Ethnology, which holds many African objects. Muzulu is looking for objects taken during those early days of Portugal's colonisation.
Aujourd'hui, nous commençons le travail pour récupérer notre patrimoine de 1400 à 1890.
He finds these pot lids from Angola.
Ceci représente aussi le chignon. Quand la femme fait un chignon derrière, on voit notamment l'expression ici.
But they're not very old and he can't get at them.
En circulant dans ces musées, à part ces pièces-là que j'ai vues, il y a d'autres pièces qui sont là-bas, mais qui sont pour moi des pièces qui ne sont pas anciennes, qui sont des pièces qui sont très récentes. Par exemple, vous voyez, je peux facilement le prendre et partir avec à la maison parce qu'il ne faut jamais demander au voleur la permission. Mais en analysant ces pièces-là, elles sont récentes. Elles ne sont pas aussi anciennes que je la veux. Donc j'ai bon jugé de ne pas les emporter.
Muzulu leaves empty-handed. But his local network has another plan.
Mais bon, attends. Vous pouvez me donner l'adresse exacte, s'il vous plaît?
His next target is the National Museum of Antigua Art. It has an exhibition with 16th century African objects. But again, he has no luck.
Non, il y a juste une petite exposition là. Une exposition temporaire. Les œuvres, là où il y a les pièces africaines, c'est pas ouvert. C'est pas ouvert aujourd'hui? C'est fermé.
His growing media profile is working against him. He believes museum staff refused him entry because they recognised him.
Ah là là, c'est compliqué.
The next day, he makes one final attempt.
Ah, tout est fermé là.
He's giving up, for now.
Qu'est-ce qu'il y en a? Mais je pense en tout état des causes, je rentre sur Paris ce soir. Comme ça, on envisage autre chose, Berlin, Bruxelles. Et voir dans quelle mesure on peut agir autrement.
Late last year, 3 years after Macron's pledge, France's parliament passed a law to return 27 objects to Africa, 26 back to the nation of Benin. Among them, these objects looted from Romeo's ancestors.
I think it's a very historical moment for a French museum because the first time that so many objects will be given back. It's not the end of something, it's the beginning of something new.
France has no immediate plans to return other African objects, but says it supports long-term cooperation with African countries on returns.
If it's a first step, it's historical. It's very important. It's the most symbolical thing you can do. If it's the only step, well, it's 27 objects, you know, it's nothing. But I think we'll need 10 to 20 years to understand if this was an absolute revolution or if it was just a speech in 2017.
For Romeo, the return of the throne his ancestors once sat on and other items is long overdue.
Vous savez, c'est comme quand les gens font un accident et pètent un membre. Ils ont la pète d'un membre et ils ressentent toujours au fait, une douleur fantôme. Le fait de le réintégrer, ça va finir par cicatriser au fait, cette douleur fantôme. Pour les Africains, le fait que ces objets réintègrent le continent africain, quelque part, c'est de leur rendre le pouvoir, de leur rendre au fait la puissance vitale. Il y a une question de dignité là-dedans. de rendre la dignité aux gens.